Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Pure Nintendo Podcast. This is your weekly dose of all things Nintendo. My name is Gemma, and joining me this week, I have the terrific Trev. Welcome back, Trev.
Oh, I like that. Terrific, Trev. Thanks, Gemma. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. And Kirk's off this week, so hope you're enjoying your vacation, Kirk. But this gives you an awesome chance, Trev, to update us on Echoes of Wisdom because you weren't with us last week when we went through our first impressions. We've both had time, a little bit more time with it this week, so we'll go through what we thought we'd go through some tips and tricks that we've come across along the way, as well as we're also playing some other fun games this week that we can go through after our Echoes of Wisdom talk. So first of all, let's start with Echoes of Wisdom because that is still kind of the game of the moment. It's been out just over a week now. You got it a little bit later than us, Trev. So, but we're up to the same thing, I think, at this point. So, yeah, how are you going with it?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I did get it late. GameStop, I'm probably done with them. But yeah, I think I actually, at the time you recorded last week, I don't even think it had arrived yet. I got it
Wow.
Saturday night.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were out all day. So we played maybe like an hour Saturday night, but we were out all day Sunday. And then I ended up getting sick from people I was around Sunday. So
No.
um, thankfully, I'm playing with Jen. So we've been able to trade off the controller. And I guess we made pretty good ground considering we started late. But um, yeah, it's going well, much like you, Gemma. We are easily distracted looking at the map and
Yes.
trying to figure out if we can reach this area or trying to find as many echoes as we can or uh,
Mm.
little side quest. Jen's really into the smoothie
Oh, yeah.
aspect, so there's a lot of game keeping us busy. I do wish I was further, but at the same time, uh, yeah, it's. I feel like you can't really rush with the Zelda game. You just
Yeah,
gotta
that's it.
go at your pace.
Yeah, and enjoy it because it is so enjoyable. So last week, yeah, you haven't had a chance to listen, but last week Justin had a really good quote, which because I said, "How do you feel about the dungeons?" And he said it was like visiting an old friend. Like he felt kind of nostalgic about it, like it was great to have it back in his life, kind of thing, which I loved.
Oh,
Yeah, it was so cool. So, and I feel the same way. How are you going with the dungeons? Because I think we're both up to the third dungeon. If we and I know we can kind of do them this isn't really going to be a spoiler talk, but just to let you know, if you're not very far through the game yet, we'll kind of mention a few little plot details, but we won't give anything away. But for us, the third dungeon is the Zora section because you and I both went the first dungeon in the forest and to the desert and then up to Zora's domain. So yeah, what are you thinking? How do you feel about the dungeons?
um, they're good. I mean, I missed I missed the dungeons from like Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom, sort of improved on it, but it's interesting. I didn't realize I missed the dungeons at the time because I
Mm,
was I was so wowed with the game, and there were so many little shrines. I didn't really care, but it was more of a after the fact. I'm like, I kind of miss traditional dungeons, and certainly in a top down style. That's what I grew up with, starting with the
mm,
original game on NES. So I'm liking them. At least the early ones, are gentler,
mhm.
which isn't surprising because they always kind of wean you in the first few. The one thing that's tripping me up, and I don't know if it's unique to me, is they have like the lines that connect the different parts of the map. Like if you
Yeah.
take a staircase, and it's there to be helpful, right? But I'm looking at it, and it confuses me because I'm not used to seeing that. Like it's like connect the dots, and I'm like, wait, why do they have these lines? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure it's helpful, but for me, it almost takes away a little bit of it because it's like that wanderlust of where am I going? How do I
Mm,
get
mhm.
there? But I don't know. What do you think about that? Have you noticed it?
I definitely have, and Justin brought it up last week actually as well, and he said it was great. It is great. I do have to kind of concur with you though, in that it confused me a little bit. I think it was in the Garuda Desert Temple. there's one room that I just could not there's a treasure chest I couldn't get to. I tried everything and well, obviously not everything because I didn't get it. There must be a way to get it. I could not get this one treasure chest. And you know how we wanna get all the things in the dungeon while we're there, so I'll have to go back and do that. But I was trying to work out with those little lines how to get to this room another way or something. But the lines, the floors, going up and down the floors, kind of, yeah, it tripped me up because normally you just see a floor at once and then you go up, 1F or 2F on the map screen and it just shows you the next level. But where the lines connect, it didn't look like they connect, like it didn't look like the levels went on top of each other properly.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
how to explain it, but yeah, it tripped me up for sure.
You got to think like three-dimensionally or something to try
Yeah,
to.
yeah. It's a
Mm.
cool improvement, like, it's yeah, like you said, it's meant to be helpful, and it is in terms of you can see where this exit will take you. But it's that kind of yeah, what is it? That spatial, what do you call it?
Yes.
It's just hard to grasp a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely agree
that's
with that.
that's cool. Justin brought that up. I do have to apologize. I normally listen or watch the podcast on YouTube, but I was
Yeah,
worried you guys might have early spoilers, so I
yeah.
avoided it. So I'll have to go back and catch it.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. We'll talk about the echoes too, because we did get into that a lot last week and our thoughts on it. We have some like tips, which might, if you've already been playing the game, you may or may not already know these. But as we go through them, also just maybe, Trev, if you have some favorite echoes or anything you've discovered that maybe seems rare or interesting, let us know.
Hmm.
Like one that we talked about last week was the P hat, which if you listened last week and you heard Justin talk about it and I didn't know about it, as soon as we finished recording the podcast, I went and found the P hat. So, do you have that one with the little helicopter leaves at the bottom? Of It's an enemy.
No, oh,
No.
spoiler. I don't think I do. The line of echoes is so long, and that was one of my kind
Yeah.
of worries. Like
Mhm.
because it reminds me of trying to attach things to like your bow and arrow in
Yes.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Yes.
But I no, I'm not sure. Maybe if we're generally around the same spot, then maybe I've run into it. But
Yeah, it's relatively early on. It's a little cave kinda southeast, I think, in the forest area. So I just missed it the first time through, but then I went so after I've done, you mentioned exploring and getting distracted. After I did the Garuda, um, Desert Temple, I was on my way to Zora's Domain, but of course, it's quite a way from the bottom left of the map up to the almost the top right or middle sort of right, and I went and decided to go to is it the Farron Swampland, even though I wasn't meant to, it's just because I could.
oh
So
yeah,
I wandered around there for a bit. I found the horses as well somewhere else. Have you done that yet? You found the horse?
yes, I
Yes.
I do have a horse. I haven't ridden him much, um,
I kinda
but
lost mine. To be
yeah, me too. Me too. It's like I never really got even in the other games. Like the only game I can ever remember really using the horse was Ocarina of Time, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
And they've never matched Epona for whatever reason. But
True, true. Yes, well, because we're both in the Zora kind of area, which is obviously water-based, I guess the tip is that echoes can actually be made underwater, although some, enemies do drown, so you might have noticed, what did I Peahat's good because he kind of flies, but say the Crawchula, is it, the little spider?
mm,
Um, he dies instantly once he hits the water. It's, like, pretty sad. So, and that Zora area is really ripe for exploring because there's lots of water, and because you can dive down, definitely check rocks in that area. Like, I would just say that without giving too many
mm.
spoilers away. Swim around and see what's at down there because there's a few little treasures to discover. And the other thing which I probably knew this, but I didn't really think about it, was that you can't make echoes in sword fighter form, which is yeah, makes sense, I suppose. So I did, and I hadn't really considered this, and then I was in the Zora area actually just yesterday, and I wanted to take that fish to that kid, and I wanted to build some little things to get there. So like some
Oh
echoes.
yeah, because you couldn't just make your own fish. You knew the
No,
difference.
I tried that. So yes,
Yeah,
you can't just you can't just echo the fish. You have to bring the actual fish from the mum to the kid.
tastes
But
like
because
home.
yeah, yes, and I wanted to sword fight those little bokoblins or whatever those whatever those ones are that are sort of guarding that area,
Hmm.
and realized I couldn't make a trampoline to get up to the kid. So yeah, it was interesting. What do you think of the sword fighter form while we're on that?
You know, I it's cool. I actually haven't used it as much as I initially thought
Hmm.
because not that it's not useful or works well because it does, but I just have been having more fun spawning various echoes to like fight for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's like that experimentation to see who works best to get against who, how they operate, and things like that.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
in fact, when I was looking over these notes, I asked Jen, I said, if you had, because Jen really likes the wolf as a fighter.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, if we switch to sword fighter form and you already have a wolf out, does he
Mm.
disappear? And she's like, I think he does. And that's something that never even dawned on me,
Oh,
just because I've used it sparingly. But I suppose it makes sense because then you'd be too overpowered. You can have a
right.
sword out and multiple enemies and it'd just be like an onslaught.
So the wolf literally just disappears when you go sword fighter.
Like, yeah, that's what she said. I got to double check, but I imagine it kind of poofs like maybe if it was defeated.
Wow, okay, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm using it less than I probably expected as well. There are times when I definitely use it, and sometimes there's a bunch of, I'm gonna say bokoblins. They're not bokoblins, but you know what I mean, those moblins or whatever they are.
Yeah,
And I just can't be bothered spawning enemies, so I just quickly go into sword fighter mode and just whack them and then go back
it
to normal.
is quicker. I
Yeah.
spawned like those little molehills that the spiders come out of.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
spawned them and they're chipping away and it's like hit and hit and hit. And finally I got sick of it and I'm like, heck with this. And I took him out in one swing of the sword.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
um yeah, I imagine as I get deeper into the game, I'm probably gonna use it more. But at
Mm.
least for now, I'm really enjoying watching the various villains kind of turn into my allies.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice twist. And I guess the sword fighter form is useful, well, necessary really in the boss fights, isn't it? Because the three that I've kind of had, I suppose it's three, I think. Anyway, um, you have to kind of do something to the boss and then go into sword fighter mode and kind of attack like crazy while the enemy's kind of subdued temporarily and then go back to creating echoes. Is that what you found as well?
Um, a bit, but maybe not as much as you. I've actually,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
um, yeah, I've had a lot of fun just seeing like because the echoes may operate a certain way in the overworld, but then like in the dungeon or with a boss, are they going to do the same thing? And I
Mm.
found actually, I can't remember the boss, but um, yeah, or even the echo I used, but they were surprisingly good against the boss, and it
Right.
shocked me because in the overworld they didn't seem all that useful. So I wonder
Mm.
if it's almost like kind of like that old Mega Man formula where each boss is maybe extra weak to a certain echo,
Ah,
and
yeah.
that kind
Could
of
be.
intrigues me because I'm like, man, I wonder if like we might unlock some sort of boss rush mode or something where or like
Yes.
a challenge mode where you have to beat the boss with just an echo. But
Yeah.
I've beaten some in ways that maybe are surprising.
Mm.
In fact, this probably isn't a spoiler because it's not a main boss, but there was like a mini boss. I don't know if you'd call it a mini dungeon, but and you know how each echo has different levels, right? You have your level 1 echoes and then
Mm.
level
Mhm.
2, 3, and so forth. Well, we got an echo that's actually ahead of our level we're at. Even though we have the echo, we can't spawn him
Oh,
because
really?
he's a level 5 echo and we're only at level 4.
Oh,
And
wow.
we got him and we weren't supposed to. And the way I ended up beating him is I don't know what they're actually called in game. You know those little spiky balls?
Yeah, 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 I do. Yes.
So I basically just started because they're low level. They don't do a lot of damage, but because they're low level, you can spawn a lot of them. So
Yeah.
I basically just started dropping them and I slowly pushed him back into a corner where he was kind of trapped. He couldn't move quicker than I could hit the button. And it took a long time, but I beat him solely using that.
That's
And
awesome.
that's one of my highlights so far. I'm like, I don't think this was meant to happen, but
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That is yeah, and that's what it's about, I think. It's about being creative and finding new ways to do things. Like some of those little caves around they get a bit more complex, but when you get to the Zora's area and you know there's caves everywhere and you go inside and it's usually a treasure chest, but there's some puzzles to solve to get to them, and they're just getting really creative and fun. It's just yeah, it's really exciting. It's yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I love that. I don't know which enemy you're talking about. I don't think I've come across level 5.
You
We're
know, I
just
should have
avoiding it.
recorded it. I didn't think of it because you can hit the record button and it'll do 30 seconds
Mhm.
or whatever. But um, yeah, it escapes me. But I think it's a whatever it is, it's a level ahead of me. So it might not
Right.
have even been a mini boss, but it was definitely it felt like a boss because we were underpowered at the point in
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
still are for that matter. But
Hey, speaking of the record button, there's a bit of an aside. I've noticed when I press it, sometimes it captures like 30 seconds, but it'll be like 15 seconds before I press the button and 15 seconds after I press the button, or something like that, like 10 before and 20 after, whatever. It's not like it starts when I press it, which is really annoying. And then sometimes it'll only go for 5 seconds or 10 seconds in total, and then other times it'll do the full 30 seconds. I find it really hard to capture, is what I'm trying to say. 30 seconds of footage using the Switch record button. Have you ever had that issue? Or does
um,
it always just work for you?
well, I think I always knew that it went backwards because I think sometimes maybe people don't realize how special a moment is until
Mm,
it happens, and then they're like, "Oh, I missed out." But since it goes backwards, you can catch some of it.
mm,
I think I've just kind of known that
right.
um, from back when and not that I've done a lot of it. Well, I shouldn't say that. Actually, I'm loaded with like videos and screenshots on the Switch, but I haven't shared a lot. Like they used to have like that Twitter implementation.
They did, yeah.
I didn't use that a whole lot, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to kind of
Yeah,
look
yeah,
into it and
and
see if there's a specific like second count for how it works.
yeah, interesting. Anyway, back to Echoes of Wisdom. So you know the R button does a little spin for Zelda, which is really
Hmm.
handy for, and it's obviously very good for cutting grass and other plants. It also puts out fires, if you didn't know that, and it can even parry some weak projectiles, which is pretty cool. As well as
I
you can outpace those enemies that come out of the rifts, those
Oh
purple kind
yeah.
of blobs, yeah, because 'cause they're quite fast. And the only way to really beat them is to spin. It gets a bit exhausting, and they do as soon as you stop, they catch you. So, yeah. Are you an R button person, aficionado?
I did know about the grass, and I suspected about the fire. I just every time I catch on fire, I hit that
Yeah.
instinctively because it's like stop, drop, and roll kind of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the parry,
Yeah,
so that's
it's
something
happened
I'm
to
gonna
me
have
a
to
couple
try.
of times, yeah. Obviously, not every, weapon can be parried, but yeah, something like maybe is it the crabs that throw little stones at you or something? Who does that? Someone
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, that sounds right. Or the Octoroks will shoot them at you. So
Oh, they're tough. They seem to just get me. I kind of try to stand there and spawn something to beat them, and while I'm standing there, they'll just shoot at me, and it's like, "No, I'm trying to spawn something. Let me just spawn something." Yeah, they're a bit annoying. Anyway, um, oh, smoothies, because you mentioned smoothies, right? And maybe you have a favorite because there's a lot of variety. I love the variety, even though you only combine 2 ingredients. But there are a lot of ingredients to combine, so that means, milk can go with mango, milk can go with chili, milk can go with, the cool melon seeds, whatever they are, right? So there's, like, all of these possibilities just for milk. Then there's, the chili can go with all of the things, it's really fun, and I can definitely, you said Jen likes to play with the smoothie formulas. I also love that. I filled up my smoothies. Now I have to drink them just to make more smoothies.
yeah, that's the thing. It gets crowded, and
Yeah.
initially we weren't using them right because you can spawn a bed and
Yes,
jump in
yes.
the bed, and then you can spawn a better bed, and your hearts fill even faster. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, why do we even need these? But of course, then you get to enemies that'll attack you while you're in bed.
Yeah.
So then you're
Yeah.
forced to start chugging them. Yeah, the only thing that, um, well, it cracks me up, much like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, you can make those little pixelated, like the unsavory drinks or whatever they're
Yeah.
called.
Yes.
Um, but we were
Yeah.
making them, and we made a lot, and I'm like, we must have hit 20 or whatever the goal was, and
Mhm.
we had actually only done like, I don't know, 8 or 9 unique ones. Because even though
Mhm.
you put different ingredients, sometimes they result in the same smoothie.
They do, yeah, like a
So
mixed
that
berry or
trips
something,
me up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, one of the really good and simple ones is the milk and salt combination, and the reason that's good is because it does give you sword fighter energy and, a good amount of hearts. I think it's, I can't remember off the top of my head, maybe 15? I don't know, it's a fair amount. I think I've got, like, 7 or 8 hearts at the moment. How are you traveling with hearts?
Um, I might have 6 or 7. I feel like
Yeah.
we found a fair amount of heart pieces just because our tendency isn't just to go to, like, to the next beacon, but we like to run around and explore
Mm.
and see what parts of the map we can fill in, so, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes we've seen heart pieces that we couldn't access, but we mark it with a little icon, and then we've gone back and gotten it, so,
Mhm.
we're probably not that far behind you, maybe 6 or 7.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I just filled a container, so which was good. Like, I got 4 and it made a whole heart, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, milk and salt is a good one. The milk is pretty plentiful when salt is relatively
Well, you
there as
start with
well.
what? You start with 3 hearts, and then if
Yeah, uh-huh.
if I've done 3 dungeons, there's half a dozen, so at
Mhm.
least 7, if maybe 8, maybe I am right with you now that I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think so. Because yeah, I've definitely filled I'm pretty sure I've found 8 pieces and that's 2 extra hearts, so yeah, must be 8. Mm, yeah, interesting. And this one I did not know, okay, until I randomly discovered it yesterday, and that is, you can when you're walking around, you can kinda use your stick, your analog stick to kind of peer a little bit to the left or right, that's
Mhm.
fine. If you press down on the right analog stick, like hold down on it, it goes into an over top view. Have you noticed this?
I did not, and it it would have been helpful because we were, in fact, you might be around the same if you're in the Zora, you get those where you can, like, echo those blocks of water,
Mm,
and
mhm.
I, like there was a section I kept falling, and I'm like, how am I falling? I'm lined up." But
Yeah.
had I known that, I probably could have seen I was off to the side or something. That's great, and it makes sense now that I think about it because, not that they're at all related other than being first party games, but Animal Crossing on the Switch had something similar. By
Right.
default,
Mm.
it has that three-quarter perspective, but you can hit and get a top down, kind of like the old
Mm.
GameCube games. So, I'm glad to know about that, and I feel like we could have probably saved ourselves a little bit of a falling into the void had we had we known that sooner. I'm gonna have to remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's a really neat trick. It's good for sort of seeing behind something if you're looking to see, like, peer behind something or, like you said, to line up, where you're at. Because especially when you're trying to bind something, I guess, you gotta line it up or you're trying to, echo something in a certain place. Yeah, it's tricky to line it up sometimes. I think that really helps, that little trick. So, yeah, definitely, give that a go. Now I mentioned the Crawtula earlier, and I can't believe I didn't know this sooner because I think it was even in the trailer, so it's not super spoilery, and probably everyone except me knew it straight away. But I think, um, if you use the Crawtula and then bind it and then press the R button to follow it or to what is it called? It's not called I can't remember what the term is, but
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, and then the Corochula will just crawl, as he is wont to do, and go up a tree or a cliff, and it just takes you with him, and it's so much easier than trying to spawn. I'm spawning trampolines and beds and all sorts to get up these cliffs, and I'm like, "Oh, wait, I can just Corochula up it." Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
so much easier.
we've been doing so many beds and trampolines. That's like our go-to
Yeah.
combination. So,
Yes.
that's another
Yeah.
thing I gotta try
Oh,
because
yeah, it makes it a lot easier to just get up those cliffs, and as I said earlier, he's not great in whatever it is not great in the water, so you gotta be careful, in that Zora area especially, you gotta find a shallow area to echo your Corochula so that it can actually go and climb to its heart's content. But yeah, it's really fun, it just gets you into all sorts of nooks and crannies while you're exploring and, really helps to find those hidden areas, so yeah, it's so, so fun to just try everything and see if you can there's this, like, oh, there's a tree. What? I should be going this way, but what's on the other side of that tree? Or like, it's just that curiosity, just seeing what's up there, what's available. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've noticed too, like when you open a new area of the map, like
Mm.
it'll fill in a large rectangle or whatever.
Mm. Mhm.
And so we were walking and I'm like, we've been there. The map's filled in. I'm like, wait a minute. Have we been there? Like we've been in this part, but we haven't been down that end.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, that's my little tip. Just because you filled in the map doesn't mean you've been to the
Yeah.
entirety of that square or whatever. Cause
Oh, that's yeah. No, that's a great point. That's exactly what I mean with the water section. Yeah, when you're in the Zora Cove, I guess, the water area is quite large and the map will be filled out, but make sure you swim all around there because there's lots of little hidden things. Yeah, it's cool. Now we mentioned sword fighter, and if you're using it a fair bit, you can quite quickly run out of the sword fighter energy. And if you don't have a smoothie on hand, how do you refill, right? Because the bed doesn't refill your sword fighter energy; it's just hearts. But if you go to one of those little rift areas that are just the little ones that are kind of scattered around, and those little blobby guys come out that we were saying you can escape from by pressing the R button, they will give you sword fight energy if you defeat them. So that's a bit handy as well. Yeah, so that little blob tracks you down and spawns some rift enemies, like kind of purple versions of normal enemies. And yeah, when you defeat them, they will give you sword fighter energy,
mm,
which can be handy if you need to replenish. You probably would have noticed also, Trev, in the still world, you seem to get the sword fighter energy a bit more easily, like it kind of is floating around, and enemies drop it a bit more regularly in the still world.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's it for my tips. Did you have anything else to add to that list?
Well, I gave out my big one with those little spiky balls.
Yeah, that was a good
Um,
one.
I don't know how much tips they are, but a couple of my go-to things. I like setting enemies on fire.
Mhm.
That fire enemy, just kind of chucking it at them, and then, they'll run around and set things on fire too. So it sometimes can be a domino effect. Um,
Yes.
a lot of times there was, I think in early in the game, you go to Link's little village,
Mhm.
and they think Zelda's Link because she's got his cloak. But
Yeah.
I think, is that where the guy is that does those little challenges where it's like beat this cave in a minute, or a minute 30
Oh.
or whatever. It might not be there. I can't remember exactly where he is, but um in any case where you have to beat enemies quickly, or if there's a lot of enemies, I've found it's good to just bind to them, and then if there's a pit, just drop them in the pit, and that saves a
Yes.
lot of time. Like there was one challenge we could not beat. There were just too many enemies and not enough time, and I'm like, heck with this. So I grabbed him and there was a hole, and I just dragged him over to the hole and dropped him. And I repeated that process over and over. So it's
Yeah.
not the most gentlemanly way to fight, but um,
Yeah.
it works.
But if it works. I haven't come across that. I've come across the little acorn, dude who scatters the acorns around, and you have to find them within a time limit. I don't think I've seen the cave where you have to defeat enemies within a certain time.
Oh,
Oh.
see, I wish I would have been able to play it today. It would have been fresher in my mind. Um,
I'll have
yeah,
to go back and
there's a
search for it.
lot. There's a lot to the game. And
Yeah,
I
there
feel
is.
like I'm only scratched the surface. It's a top-down game that feels like a 3D game in a lot of ways. Like I probably put more time into this. Like if this was Link's Awakening, I probably would have beaten it by this point, right?
Mm,
Because it's a
mhm.
shorter adventure, even though I love it. But this just has a lot. That's why it kind of ties into what we were speculating about earlier. I feel like it's in some respects like the joining of the two worlds, where it's going to
Yes.
appeal to the
Yeah.
top-down fans and the fans of like Breath of the Wild, where you can do more of that
Mm.
creative stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And, like I mentioned this last week, but since you didn't hear it, and you probably know this already, but speaking of binding enemies, do you ever hold on to them with bind so that your echoes can just attack them freely? That's another trick you can do.
Um, I actually, I actually haven't. I think I joked about that before, but no. A lot of times, what I'll do if there's like a ledge, Like, and
Mm.
there's enemies below, I'll just spawn enemies from up high. Like, I'll have the high ground,
Oh,
and I'll
yes.
just kind of watch them run around. I'll just make sure I keep the camera with them so like they don't wander off
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
Um, which is fun. And again, it's not the most honorable way to fight, but
Yeah, no, I
you
know.
do what you got to do.
That's like, yeah, I do feel bad with the binding and the holding of the enemy because 'cause they're just standing there frozen while my echoes attack it. It feels a bit cheap, but what are you gonna do? Sometimes you just have to.
It's a dog eat dog world.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else with Echoes of Wisdom before we move on to some other games that we're playing this week?
Um, I hope everyone who's playing it, everyone who's listening, I hope you're having fun with it. I hope you're taking your time. Obviously, we are. Yeah, I know the game's been out a week. We don't have a review up yet, and we probably won't for a while. Um, and I feel it's because everyone just wants to really enjoy it. I mean, Zelda games don't come out
Mm,
every day or every year. So um, be patient. Try to enjoy the experience. A lot of websites are already posting like full walkthroughs and
mm,
find
mm.
every secret. And my advice is think twice before clicking on those.
Yeah,
Because you don't want to
yeah.
ruin the experience. You'll never be able to get it back.
Yeah, that's a really good point, definitely, yes. And we will be working on a review, as you said, but yeah, we're definitely trying to enjoy it as well, as much as possible before we get that out. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's an awesome conversation about Echoes of Wisdom. Listeners, let us know your thoughts so far and any Echo tips and tricks that you might have, and where you're up to and what you think. We'd love to know your thoughts. But we have been playing somehow in amongst Echoes of Wisdom. We've actually we found time for a bunch of other games as well. So I'll start off with one. I did tease this at the end of last week's episode. We didn't get time to talk about it last week, and it's one I've been playing for the last few weeks. And my review is a little bit overdue, but it's coming this week, probably not before this episode airs. But the Plucky Squire, and I think I mentioned this quite a few weeks ago when the trailer dropped before the game even came out, and it came out in September. And it's a lovely, very lovely game, and with a little bit of a nod to Zelda actually, because it's the squire, the plucky squire of the namesake. He's a little sword wielding character. He's a good guy. He's like a Link of sorts, and he exists in a storybook world. And he's the hero. Basically, there's a princess, there's a villain who happens to be some sort of mage or magician, and the story is, it's a storybook, so it always follows the same pattern. This magician character, you know, finds out that he's in a storybook and gets sick of that and doesn't want the ending that he always has, which is that he always loses. And the Plucky Squire, whose name is Josh, he always wins, right? Jot always wins. So he uses his magic and kind of expels Jot from the book. And so suddenly Jot's in the real world, on a desk. The book has been created by a kid. It's very creative. This is one of the most creative games I've ever played. It's so visually wonderful. And just the storybook elements are just terrific because there's narration when you're on a new page, and the story kind of the narrator reads out the story, as you're progressing, and then you get to play through the story. Like, it's got platforming levels, a bit like Zelda actually. You know how in Zelda we've got the overworld, and then sometimes you go into a cave and it becomes like a side view, like a platformer.
Hmm. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
the Plucky Squire does that too, actually, and it works really well. There's lots of little puzzles to solve, lots of collectibles. You have some friends who help you. There's lots of little characters you meet. It's very cute, very sweet, and yeah, just a lovely game all round. Something I'm glad they released before Echoes of Wisdom because I got to play it kind of before that. I think it came out maybe, oh gosh, it might have only been 2 weeks before. I think it was like the 12th of September, something like that. So around 2 weeks before Echoes of Wisdom came out, which hopefully gave players a chance to try it.
17th looks like
17th. Oh, not even so, not that much ahead, really.
maybe a week.
Interesting timing, though. I do think it's gonna be hard to compete with Echoes of Wisdom because they are somewhat similar in terms of the look, the feel, the style, kind of, yeah. Anyway, it is a lovely game. It does have a few. I think it's just a bit glitchy sometimes in terms of the frame rate, which I don't even usually notice, but sometimes it just happened. I kinda just reset the Switch and it was fine. So I don't know if it's just the memory was full or whatever, but yeah, I did notice that a few times, bit of stuttering. And it's not the hardest of games, but it's super fun while you're playing it. So definitely recommend the Plucky Squire if you have finished with Echoes of Wisdom, for example, and you want something nice and sweet, and not super challenging to kind of enjoy, then I could definitely recommend the Plucky Squire to you. Um, yeah, and as I said, I'll get my review up soon, so you'll have my full thoughts on that one. Did you have any questions about the Plucky Squire? You remember that trailer, right?
I
Plucky Squire.
do. It looks lovely.
Mm,
You actually made me think of something, and it's not directly related to Plucky Squire, but I
mm,
forgot about it. When you were talking about stuttering, and
yeah.
I don't know if you guys talked about this last week. Obviously, Echoes of Wisdom, there might be some frame rate concerns, right?
Mhm.
I'm not sensitive to that, but I know a lot of people are. Um, but here's something I noticed because it did look a little more choppy than Link's Awakening, and I know, for instance, like that bugged Justin,
Mm,
the
mhm.
frame rate. But what I did is I actually took the data and moved it from my SD card onto the system itself, and it made a sizable difference.
Yeah,
So,
okay. That's a good tip
um,
too.
yeah, and people probably know about that. I knew about that, not even with this game, just in general from years
Mm,
ago. But yeah, if the stutter is bothering you, when you transition out of a house or to new areas, or if you're just really sensitive to frame rate, check and see about moving your data from your micro SD card onto the system itself, and I think you'll see an improvement. So,
oh,
and that
yeah.
might even work with Plucky Squire, for that matter.
True. Yeah, it could do. That's a good point. Justin definitely did mention that last week for Echoes of Wisdom, the stuttering. I didn't notice it at all, to be honest, in Echoes of Wisdom, but I'm not that, like I said, I'm not really that sensitive to it usually.
Yeah.
So, and or maybe it is saved onto my system already, potentially. I haven't checked
Yeah.
that.
Well, we grew up with what Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. I mean, those
Mm.
frame rates were often,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the best, but the game's fun. That's that's
Yeah,
what matters.
exactly. Yeah, that's it. Exactly right. Yes, totally. Would you like to tell us about one of the games you're playing this week?
Yeah, this is a review game already up on the site. Oh, actually, shout out to Epic Mickey too. I didn't get
Mm.
a chance to talk about that. That came out just 2 days before Echoes of Wisdom, so not the best timing, but
No.
thankfully I got the code in advance and I was able to really work a lot with it. But that's a great game too. But
Yeah.
this particular game is called Fragrant Story and Papayas Path, and it's a slightly older game. It came out at the end of August, with very little promotion. Evidently, the developers got some health issues, but I was reached out about doing a review to see if I could just give the game, a little bit of coverage. And of course, when they do that, any coverage is good, right? Even bad coverage, a lot of times, they
Mm.
appreciate just because it gets the word out. But in this case, I thought the game was really good. I gave it an 8 out of 10, very close to an 8.5. I debated for a while. Um, it's a game that came out at the tail end of the 3DS life. Like they were shutting down the eShop, and the developer got the game out the door just in the nick of time. And
Wow.
it was pretty short and bare bones, but they did that just so they could add the DLC. Because what happens, even though the eShop's closed, if you have the game, you can access the DLC, which has a ton of content.
Oh, that's cool.
And the
Mm.
Switch version is that complete version. It's a tactics game, so Kirk would love it. If he was here.
Yeah.
Um, but it's got a lot of good content, and I'm not really a fan of that style of game as a rule. I don't play a lot of them, but it hooked me. It hooked Jen, even to the point we went back to it a bit after Echoes of Wisdom. Not a lot, but we went back to try to increase our completion percentage because it's a game that's you can chart, how far you are in, and we're like 40% or whatever. And
Mm. Yeah.
um, it's it's a game that is a higher budget game than its price indicates. It's like 7.99, I think, but it's
Mhm.
got great professional voice acting. Um, heck, it's got Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride voicing one of the villains.
Really?
You know,
Wow.
telling us, let's fight to the pain or whatever. It's like So I look at that and I just, oftentimes we talk about when we review a game, like attention to detail, quality, things like that. And this game has it in spades. I really liked it. It has a few quirks that might just be because I'm not the biggest fan of this genre, but I definitely recommend checking it out. And if you did grab it on the 3DS, please by all means update it while you still can, because like I said, even though the eShop is closed, you can still do the update. I'm not sure exactly how that works because I haven't done that yet, but
Mm.
um, that's still there. It's like re-downloading games you deleted. You can still access them, even if it's not maybe intuitive. So um,
Yeah.
just a great little hidden gem, and yeah, it might sneak in to my favorites list at the end of the year. I don't know.
I was gonna
It's
ask that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
it's borderline right now.
Yeah.
Still have a few big games coming out, but we'll see.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. The list is getting longer and longer as we as the year progresses. So yeah, exactly. Fragrant Story and Papayas Path. It does look lovely. I do remember reading a review for that one, and it does sound quite intriguing. I'm interested myself, actually. So yeah, check it out. Let us know if you've played it, listeners, or are aware of it. Because yeah, I think that's a great price point too. 7.99 seems like a bit of a bargain, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was surprised, when I because great. I mean, great pixel art. Like everyone uses pixel art, right? Because they're trying to channel nostalgia, but
Mm,
not everyone
yeah.
uses it well. This
Hmm.
game has got good pixel art, great music, the voice acting just top notch, and just a lot of content. It'll
Yeah.
if you're into it, it'll keep you playing. It's kept me playing. Like I said,
Yeah.
even a bit post Zelda. So
Nice. Well, speaking of pixel art, I have just recently reviewed something called Crossy Road Castle, which is, or is it, this is more that voxel, is that what you call it? That kind of
mm,
box pixel kind of look. And I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this game, Crossy Road Castle. It's super fun. It's made for multiplayer, but you can play it single player as well. And, I mean, I'm aware of Crossy Road, the original arcade game where you have to cross a road, like, kind of Frogger style. I don't know if you've ever played that one, but it's pretty fun and hard.
I played Frogger.
Yeah, well, you know what that is. This takes those Crossy Road characters who are it's a cute chicken and a cute duck, and puts them into a platforming adventure, and there's a whole bunch of other animals they've added in because you can play with up to 4 people locally or online. The online works really well as well. You can join, random people just by, joining a group, which is really cool, really fun. You can send emojis to each other as well, so it's kind of, it's a cooperative platformer, not a competitive platformer. The aim is
Mm.
there are 4 of you in a room, and, the rooms are very short, so each level is very, very short, and the goal is to get to 100 rooms in this castle. Along the way, every 30 rooms, you have to do a boss fight, but the goal is for 1 person to make it through to the end of the room. There's an entry on the left and an exit on the right, typically, and, you all start at the entry. There's traps along the way, there's spikes, there's moving platforms, there's enemies, there's elevators, there's things that squash you. It's a little bit Mario in that respect. The things that swing around with spikes on them, there's just all sorts of traps. And as long as one of the 4 of you makes it to the exit, you all pass that level, and you don't even lose a heart. If you all die during the level, then you do lose a heart. You have 3 hearts, basically. You share the hearts as a team. So it does feel very cooperative that way, which I really, really love. My son and I have been playing it a fair bit. We are struggling to get to the 100th level though. It's it gets quite hard as you get through it, but it's super fun and super addictive. There's so many unlockables. There's stickers, there's hats for your little avatars, and of course there's more avatars. There's more towers. I can't remember the number. I think there's like 8 or 10 different towers you can unlock as well. So there's like the standard kind of room, like, it just looks like a normal room, and then there's, like, a construction site, there's some zombie related one, there's just heaps. It's very creative, very colorful, very chaotic, very fast, and also very fun. So, I do recommend this one, if you're looking for some kind of multiplayer platforming experience, kind of like Mario, but way shorter levels and, much faster action, I guess. There are little secrets as well. We just discovered this recently. there's the exit, like I said, on the right. There's an entry door and an exit door. There's sometimes, just sometimes, a little other exit, a little green door hidden maybe in the top left, because you're supposed to go left to right to the exit. But if you happen to get to the top left, there's a little green door that you can go into. And that if you defeat that room, um, you get a little green token. And I don't even know what that gives you because I haven't got enough of them yet for it to do anything. But we've got a few. I think if you get a bunch of them, it gives you some extra thing. Maybe it unlocks a tower, or maybe it gives you another avatar. I'm not sure yet, but because they're quite hard to get, but we've got a couple. But yeah, just look out for little things like that. It's one of those games that just is full of hidden surprises, and even the enemies are cute. They're like sometimes they're little cars, or I don't know, like they look like little not Goombas exactly, but little creatures that are Goomba-esque. It's just very, very cute and colorful. Yeah. Um, and did I say chaotic? I think I've mentioned it a few times. It's very chaotic. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure what to expect because it seemed I think it's a mobile or a smart device game, from a couple of years ago, maybe that's made its way to the Switch. I hadn't played it before. It fits really well on the Switch though, and it's yeah, if you've got a few people to it's obviously slightly easier with more people because you then have if you've got 3 people or 4 people, that's 3 or 4 chances to get to the exit. Whereas if it's just a solo adventurer, like when I first played it, it was just me, and so I can only get as far as I can get. And then once I die, 3 times, use up my 3 hearts. After each, how many levels? Is it 10 levels, I think? You can replenish your hearts by spending coins that you collect in a level, so there is that opportunity to kind of refill hearts as well, so that helps too. Yeah, it's really fun though. Let me know, listeners, if you have tried Crossy Road Castle. I quite enjoyed my time with it. Any other questions from you about Crossy Road Castle, Trev?
Yeah, I did have one. I
Yeah?
was, reading your review, and you were talking
Mm.
about how the levels they weren't randomly generated, but they were um I forget how you like dolled out in
Oh,
in random
yeah,
orders. So my
yeah.
question is on certain runs, could they theoretically like put a super hard level like first, or are they always kind of whatever order they're in? Do they always kind of start on the easier end?
Yeah, kind of, pretty much. Like, the first level is very, very basic, and you can guarantee to pass level 1 because it's just enter and exit kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Um, they do tend to start off easier, but they are random. So it might be in sets of 10 or 30. I'm not sure exactly, but like every 10 levels is a bit of a break where you can refill your hearts. Every 30 levels is a boss fight. So it might be that they randomize them within that set of 10 or 30. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, you wouldn't get the super hard levels up front. But yeah,
Good to know.
they are definitely presented to you randomly, but you do recognize some of them, so you will get familiar with them, which I like. I'm more of a fan of that style than the randomized, like randomly generated, because you can kind of once you know the tricks to it, it makes it slightly easier, especially if you're trying to get to level 100. That's harder to do if it's random every time. You can't get to know the levels, and you're not going to progress as far. And because each tower is different, once you've kind of conquered one tower, you don't necessarily have to do it again. You can go on to the next one, and learn new things then. So it's still giving you heaps of new content without being randomized or randomly generated, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, so I'd say it's in sets of 10 or 30, I'm guessing, by the difficulty. Because yeah, it definitely starts off easier. Hmm.
cool.
Anyway, yeah, a lot of fun. We'll continue to play that, I think, on and off for the next whatever little while because it's just something it's very easy to jump into, very one more kind of mentality, like just one more, just one more. Of
Mhm.
course, once you die, it's a little bit frustrating because like you get up to level 70 or 80 or 90 or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're so close. But it's like, let's just try again, kind of thing. And because each level is kind of bite sized, like each level maybe a hard level is 30 seconds, but some are like 10 or 20 seconds. They're quite short because they're just a room that fits onto a screen. So it's, yeah, very quick. The boss fights are a bit longer. They're also quite creative though. Like it's usually this giant eagle that throws things at you and you have to avoid them. Or there's an eagle, robot kind of version of an eagle, which was really fun. And he's driving a car backwards, and that's kind of a side scrolling um, version. As opposed to it reminded me a bit of Ice Climber actually, because the eagle is going up and you're kind of scaling upwards as well. Yeah,
Ah,
little nod there, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so what's next for you? What's the other game that you'd like to talk about?
All right. So this game, which I have not gotten far into, in fact, I just started it recently. It's called, if I'm saying it right, Dagon Complete Edition,
Mhm.
which is based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft, an author who I'm not overly familiar with, but those who are, he's kind of like well, he was inspired by like people like Edgar Allan Poe, so kind of, some of the maybe creepier, mysterious stories. And
Mm.
I guess it makes sense because it's October and I feel like we're getting a lot more offers for scarier games. And this particular one doesn't seem to be, from what I can gather, it's not like supernatural, like demonic, like horror or anything. It seems more like just in setting up atmosphere and mystery and maybe leaving you to your own interpretation. But basically, the way it plays out, or at least the part I've played, I'm not far into it. It's more like a visual novel than like an adventure game or a puzzle game. They have a really good narrator who presumably is reading right from Lovecraft's works, and basically all you do is click a portion of the screen and move on. They do have areas where you can click and get a little bit of like trivia to learn more about like Lovecraft's life or the time period he was living in, which I really like. But at least initially, it seems like a game that maybe wouldn't appeal to somebody who's looking for like action or jump scares or anything like that. Um, but it's intriguing, and I like that. Again, for being like a quote unquote maybe spookier game, it's only teen rated. Because a lot of the horror games are M rated because they're bloody or have grotesque imagery or things like that, and that doesn't seem to be this type of game. So I appreciate that.
Mm. Yeah, it certainly looks atmospheric with the visuals, that's for sure. Looks
Yeah,
spooky.
I don't know a lot about Lovecraft, and which is kind of funny because I am a reader. I mean, I love print literature, and
Mm.
certainly
Mhm.
Poe and those who inspired him. I know, so I might have to look into some of his work. This particular one, the title at least, I think, is from a short story, so it should be an easier read if anyone's looking to get an introduction, maybe into him. But
Wow.
he had a difficult life, from what little bit I've gathered. So
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
and he lived to 46 years old. He was,
yeah,
yeah, not
and
that old when he died.
this inspired from his life and his dreams, and we all know we can dream some weird things. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He's from Rhode Island, is that your neck of the woods? Not really.
it is, yeah. I'm a New England
Yeah.
guy, and
Yeah, there you
uh,
go.
yeah, pretty much New England. Any parts your neck of the woods, because we're
Yeah.
small states for the most part, and Rhode
Mm.
Island especially. It's the smallest state, so
Yeah.
somewhat of a local celebrity for Southern New England. Ironically, from what I gathered, he wasn't particularly famous while he was alive, which I feel like that's the case with a lot of artists, right? They're appreciated
Mm.
more after they pass. So,
Mhm.
um, you'd have
Agreed.
to think though that he might appreciate a product like this, because a title like this, because it really does seem to be faithful to the source material, for better or worse. Better if you're a reader, maybe worse if you're a gamer. But I'm intrigued so far. It'll come out a few days after this episode post, and hopefully my review will be, if not up on embargo day, pretty close to. It does have some DLC content, which hence the complete title.
Mm.
And maybe
Mhm.
those play out more a little bit like a video game. I don't know. So stay tuned to
Yeah.
Pure Nintendo to find out.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to seeing that. And maybe it is the visual novel style because he's an author, like you said. Like maybe that's meant to be an immersive experience in terms of taking one of his short stories and bringing it to life visually and interacting
Yeah,
with it somehow. I don't know. But it'll be, yeah,
it's
very
tricky.
interesting to see. Yeah, it is
It's
tricky.
tricky
Mhm.
doing. I mean, and we've seen it like movies, TV shows based off books, it's like they never. It's hard to do justice to a book, and I imagine the
Mm,
medium of
mhm.
games is probably the same way because certain things don't translate as well,
Yeah.
But um, so far, at least, they seem to be nailing the atmosphere, and as I said, the narrator is quite effective. I don't actually know if it's anyone famous in the voice acting community. I'll probably have to look into that, but it helps,
Mm,
because when you're basically just reading, it really brings the tale to life.
yeah.
Oh, and I should add, I forgot to mention this. They let you adjust the font because I got
Oh,
middle-aged eyes now. A lot of times I have a
yeah.
hard time seeing, especially in handheld mode with text where it's really small, but you can increase the font. So that's a
Oh, that's
great
cool.
that's a great quality of life feature for accessibility.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because sometimes the font is just too small. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
especially when all you're going to be doing, well, not all you're going to be doing, but when mostly what you're doing is reading. I mean, I suppose you could just close your eyes and listen to the narrator, but you'd still have to know where to click. You'd want to be taking in the sights. So
Mm, mhm.
it's important to have something that you can read without eye strain.
Yeah, definitely. So Dagon, we think it's called, Dagon Complete Edition. When does it come out, Trev?
It comes out October 10th, I want to say.
Okay, nice. So pretty soon. This episode will launch on the 7th, so this week, essentially. So look out for that one and Trev's full review. Can't wait to hear your full thoughts. And it might get you into HP Lovecraft after all.
I think I think so. Like I said, I'm more into those kind of psychological horror games than like
Mm,
slashers or whatever. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
Well, we'll
eh,
definitely try to. Sorry, you go.
oh no, go ahead. Just a reminder, teen rated. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something I think that will potentially broaden its audience.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, we'll hopefully be going into some horror games during this month now that we're closing in on Halloween, I guess, coming up in the next few weeks. So yeah, stay tuned for some more horror related titles. The last one for me is one I wanted to mention the last few weeks, but I just haven't had a chance to because we've had pretty big shows happening. But I did want to mention Star Wars Hunters because season 3 is out now and it came out just a couple weeks ago. And what was it 20? Can't remember now, 24th or 22nd of September, something like that. And, if you've listened to the podcast regularly, you'll know I am a bit of a fan of Star Wars Hunters. And season 3 adds some new level oh, adds a new level, which is the Hoth-based level, which is really cool looking, this kinda ice-based level. Really hard, I find. I keep falling off this level. It seems very contained, and there's lots of kind of hidden areas, like, down you can go down to this kind of lower snowy area or there's like an inside a little base kind of thing which has, you know, traps around it that you can just fall down. So I find myself falling off it a lot. I find it very hard to be stealthy in this map because it seems very closed in and people would find you very easily. But it's still fun and I love the look of it, of course. Hoth is, from The Empire Strikes Back, one of probably my favorite Star Wars movie actually.
Mm.
Um, the new character is the little Ewok, little she's a female actually, who rides what looks like a lizard, like a little at one of those little two-footed at things.
Oh
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's really cool. She's actually quite strong. I've used her a few times, and she's really fun to use. So there's more battles, having a new character to unlock. The other cool thing that they've done because Reeve, who is the Sith character, she's my go-to. I love her the most. So I had leveled her up. I'd maxed her levels before this update came, before season 3 launched. So I was max. I think it's like 24 or something, whatever the level was. This update brings you can keep going. So I can now level up Reeve again because I was like, oh, maybe I should level up my other characters. But no, now I'm back to Reeve. So I just love her wielding her saber, her red saber, and she's fast and she doesn't have a lot of health, but she's very strong on the attack. So, um, have you had a chance to try it yet, Trev?
I have not. Um,
That's okay. There's a lot of
which
games to
is
play. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising though because you have been talking about it, even if not on the podcast, you've like mentioned it to us. So
Yeah,
it is a little
it's
surprising.
fun. Yeah. it's not even a game I would typically play. I'm not really into shooters at all, really. Maybe it's just the Star Wars theme. It's a free game, but that gives me also like I've paid for the I guess it's called DLC, would you call it? So the season is free, it updates automatically, but the new characters are not free. And so I've just gone and paid for the Ewok character, for example.
That's how they get
Um,
you.
that's how they get you, and I don't feel as bad paying for it because I've been enjoying this game for free for months now, and so I'm like, "Well, I don't mind. I don't mind. I'll just spend this money on this character, and I will use it and have fun with it." Um, but it's optional, you don't have to do that. You can still play with the characters all the characters in some of the matches, you get automatically assigned to a character. So that's kind of a fun way if you wanted to just, try one, without having used it before. It kind of throws in the deep end a little bit if it's a character you haven't practiced with, but it also gives you the chance to try these characters that, are kind of behind a paywall. So yeah, there are other ways to use them. It's just you can't select them by default if you haven't paid paid for the character. But yeah, no, it's really fun. It's fun. I haven't played it much this week because Echoes of Wisdom has consumed my time, but it's still there and it's slowly becoming one of my most played games. I would not be surprised if it's my most played game of this year, to be honest. Since I don't have,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
well, there's nothing like Tears of the Kingdom to keep me, like last year, Tears of the Kingdom was such a deep game. Echoes of
Yeah,
Wisdom will probably be up there also, but it's October, so Echoes of Wisdom only has a few months
yeah.
to kind of sink hours into, whereas Star Wars Hunters has been out for quite some time now.
It'll be
So
interesting when we get our year-end stat
yeah,
in my
and
email.
I did this year. I have done what you said, Trev, and because what I used to do is separate it and play professionally, I guess you could call it. Like for pure Nintendo reviews, I'd play with my pure Nintendo account, my US account, and for just kind of stuff that I want to play, like on the side or things that I buy, like Star Wars Hunters, I guess I play on my Australian account.
Mhm.
This year, I've just played solely on my Australian account, so it won't be. I won't have two lists. I'll just have one list, and it'll be a bit more accurate. So
There you
we'll
go.
see how that goes. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Looking forward to our interview discussion in December. Yes, but we are at the end of the show. So anything else you wanted to mention before we close things off?
Yeah, real quick, just because you were talking about Star Wars.
Mm.
For those who don't know, yesterday at the time of this recording, they released a bundle pack that has Star Wars Bounty Hunter and Republic Commando on
Oh,
sale for the Nintendo Switch. And we have reviews of both of those games, Gemma. You did Bounty Hunter, and
I did. Yeah.
Republic Commando scored even higher from Jen Sheffield. Hey, hope she's doing
Nice.
well. So yeah, if you're a Star Wars fan, grab the bundle and save some money and read our
Yeah.
reviews.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I did enjoy Bounty Hunter because I hadn't played that. I think that was a GameCube game originally, and I hadn't
Mm.
played it back then and quite enjoyed it this time around. So, yeah, can recommend. That's awesome. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Trev. And thank you for joining me this week. Listeners, let us know what you're playing. Are you loving Echoes of Wisdom? Have you had time for other games? What's on your playlist? We'd love to know. We are on social media, so please follow us over at Twitter/X, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. Please, obviously, like and subscribe on this video if you are watching on YouTube. If you're on a podcast platform, leave us a review. We'd love to know how we're doing, and it means a lot to us, the support. So thank you so much. If you want to go even further than that, you can head on over to patreon.com/pure Nintendo and you can support us and also get a copy of our magazine, our printed magazine. We're at the early stages of our next issue. So look forward to that. It will come out before the end of the year. I think that's about it. Did I miss anything, Trev?
No, I think that was good. It was a good show. It was fun, and we certainly appreciate all the listens, all the likes, all the comments. It may seem like a small thing to you guys, but it means a lot to us. It really
It
does.
really does. It really does. So, yes, thank you very much. Thanks, Trev. And until next week, game on, everybody. Bye.
So long.